Hey everybody, and welcome back. So glad you could make it again to another video. And today we're gonna have some fun and make one of our family's favorite recipes. Hello family and friends, I'm Susan and welcome to my home. Hey everybody, it's Susan again and welcome back. Today we are going to be starting on my holiday favorites recipes. One of the holiday favorites is my sweet potato casserole with a candied pecan topping. It is so amazingly good. It is almost like a dessert, and a lot of times we eat it just about like a dessert because it is so sweet and so good and so easy if you just know a few simple tricks whenever you're putting it together. So let me teach you those tricks. Let's get started on some sweet potato casserole. Let's get the ponytail up and let's get to cooking. And here's a recipe that I've been using for years. We're going to need 3 cups of sweet potatoes, cooked and mashed. Half a cup of sugar, which I've got the sugar right there. 2 eggs that I'll get out of the refrigerator. A half a cup of evaporated milk. A teaspoon of vanilla, and I use the imitation vanilla. I can't tell that much of a difference. A pinch of salt. A 1/3 cup of butter, which basically I melt a full stick of salted butter. Then for the topping, we'll need a 1/3 cup of flour, a cup of brown sugar, a cup of chopped pecans, and again a melted 1/3 cup of butter. And for the actual sweet potatoes, I do add some cinnamon sugar and some of my homemade pumpkin pie spice. If y'all want me to put the recipe in, I will. But this stuff is so good, and it's going to make this recipe amazing. So let's get started. Okay, let's go ahead and set the oven on bake for 350 degrees and let that get started heating up. Drain your sweet potatoes, put them in a pot, and turn them on warm to heat up. I melt 1 of the sticks of butter in the microwave in this Pyrex measuring cup. It's a 2-quart measuring cup. That way I can make the topping. I'm going to go ahead and put the butter in the measuring cup and put it in the microwave for about a minute. And while the sweet potatoes are heating up right now, I'm going to go ahead and do the topping. The topping calls for 1 cup of brown sugar, 1/3 cup of flour, 1 cup of chopped pecans, that's a full cup, but that'll work, and the melted butter I just did in the microwave, the 1 stick of butter melted. And what you're going to do is you're going to mix this together, and then you're going to put it in the fridge. But let me show you what it looks like once you mix it. You don't have to mix it extremely well, but you want it definitely to absorb all the butter into the flour and sugar, because this is going to make kind of like a pecan streusel type topping on top, which to me it's like candied pecans if you've ever had them. It is so good. And now, I don't see any white flour in that. It's all absorbed with the sugar and the butter. And it's time to put it in the refrigerator for just a little bit. You want it not to be this soft. You want it to be a little bit firmer. That way it will stay on top of the sweet potatoes whenever you put them in the container. So let's put this in the fridge for a little bit, and then we'll come back and do the sweet potato portion. Drain the sweet potatoes well before I put them into the pan. And because they were so small, I did not have to mash them. If your sweet potatoes are larger, after you let them warm up a little bit, then you may need to use a potato masher, but I did not. They basically, as I stirred them, just kind of broke apart like this and became a mush of some sort. I did look through here, make sure there was no dark parts in here, and remove those, because sometimes there are. Any really stringy pieces I removed. So we've got this looking really good. Now the next thing we need to do is add the spices and the evap milk. And I'm going to measure this to make sure that I do have 3 cups of sweet potatoes to go in our container. And those 2 smaller cans made a perfect 3 cups of potatoes. So I've got all that done. The first thing I want to do is add half a cup of sugar. And mix that all up. Make sure the sugar's well dissolved. I need to add 2 eggs. Okay, I'm going to add the eggs that I've mixed well. And I'm going to go ahead and add the butter in because it needs to be melted, and these potatoes are nice and hot. And I'm going to go ahead and cut those in real quick. Okay. I've got the butter in there along with the eggs, and now I'm just going to mix them in because I want the warmth of the potatoes to melt that butter. And that warmth is actually going to mix through those eggs so they don't decide to start cooking on us, because the potatoes were already warm. So I didn't have to melt that butter before I put it in. I just need to let it stay in here a little bit while it's still warm and let it melt. And then once the butter's melted, we'll add the rest of the ingredients, or we can go ahead and add them. Now we're going to mix in the seasonings. It is not on the recipe. We do need a pinch of salt, which is no big problem. Which right here, salt. I'm going to do a pinch of it. You know, it just helps to make everything taste a little better. And we do need a teaspoon of vanilla. Which I'm just using imitation vanilla extract. It works just as well, and it's a lot cheaper. There we go. So we've added the vanilla. We've added the salt. The next thing I want to add is a little bit of cinnamon sugar. I always like to just add a sprinkle of it, just like I do to my pumpkin pies. You'll see that whenever I make them. A little sprinkle of cinnamon sugar, and then a little sprinkle of my pumpkin pie spice, my homemade pumpkin pie spice. Just a little bit. And then I'm going to whisk that in, or stir that in, excuse me. Now the only thing I believe I have left is my half cup of evaporated milk. So let's go ahead and measure this and get this in. Okay, evap milk, half cup. Pour that in. Now we have everything in the pumpkin mixture. We have the topping mixture completely made and in the fridge, which it doesn't need to stay in there long. It just needs to stay in there long enough to keep cool. So whenever we put it on top of this, it doesn't sink to the bottom or separate up. We want it to be able to float on top and stay on top. Whoop. That way it'll make a wonderful crust. Let me make sure I've got all of this stirred in together, which it looks like I do. And now we'll get the topping out and put it on top of the mixture. The oven is ready now. I've gotten the topping out of the refrigerator and used my fingers to mush it up a little bit. Now let me show you how I put it on top of the sweet potatoes. And this is why you want it to be cold, so it will stay on the top and not go all the way to the bottom. This just takes a few seconds to put this all around. Then I try to fill all the holes. And the amount that I do with this recipe seems to be a good bit. And of course it does melt down a little bit whenever it cooks, so it does spread out just a little bit. But it does make like a pecan topping in here. Okay, here we go. Every part of the top has been covered with some type of a topping. And it's ready to go in the oven at 350 for 35 to 40 minutes. So let's go ahead and start it in the oven at 350 for 35 minutes, and we'll see where we are. And I'll set my timer for 35 minutes and we'll see what it looks like whenever we get there. Okay, it's been 35 minutes. And as you see, it's still wobbly. So it definitely needs to go in for the extra 5. And then we'll see how that looks in 5 minutes. I've cooked it for 40 minutes and it is still jiggly on top. So I'm going to turn the oven off and leave it in here in the oven to firm up just a little bit, probably about 5 more minutes with the oven completely off. And we'll see where it's at. I've got the sweet potato casserole out of the oven. I've let it cool down, and as it cools down, the jiggling that happens in there quits. It becomes more solid. It isn't like crispy solid, but it's more solid to where there is a solid pecan crust on top and then sweet potato on bottom. It's so good. Let's dig in. Let's see if it's solid enough that it has a little crust on it, and it does. And it needs to cool a little bit more. It's still a little bit hot. That's why it's coming off like it is, but still. So good. Look at those layers. Oh my God, that's so good. Now, let me taste it. Okay, and here we go. Let's see if it's cooled down. Look at that bite, how amazing it is. So good. So buttery. So sweet. Those candied pecans are so good. Oh my gosh. Just let it cool down a little bit before you serve it. And all this will solid up some more because it hasn't been cooling down for more than maybe 10 minutes. But this, definitely a holiday favorite from our house to y'all's. I hope you've enjoyed this video on sweet potato casserole. It is the second installment in my holiday favorites. The first installment is the baked mac and cheese. It's another one of the items that we can't have any type of festivity without. Sweet potato casserole is so good. It's really simple. It's really easy. Just listen to the little tricks that I tell you in the video on how to make that topping to where it becomes the most luscious candied pecan type topping. And there are more recipes to come. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get all of my holiday goodies into videos. I mean, I may be putting out a video every day toward Thanksgiving just to get everything done and get everything out there so you'd know. Whenever it gets close to Thanksgiving, I do have a schedule of how I cook each of my items, what I cook the day before, what I cook the morning of, and about what time I cook them and how long it takes, prep time, cook time. I've got all that scheduled out to where you can get it to where all of your holiday items are done at the same time. That way you won't have anything that's cold and anything that's hot. They'll all be nice and warm for your guests whenever they get there. But don't forget to subscribe, and it's always glad to see you back again. Until next time, have a great week. Please like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram or Pinterest, and ring that bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos.